I'm Dan Edmonds, and this is the new Toyota TRD Pro. That's right, the Pro is a lot bigger than it was last year. But we're going to get really down and dirty, and we're going to take the wheels and tires off, and we're going to see what makes the TRD Pro so special. Also, we're going to look at the Toyota Trailhunter, which is a related model. The Trail has the same 33-inch tires and fender flares as the TRD Pro, but obviously its emphasis is a little bit more towards the overlanding direction. What we're going to do is look at the suspension of both trucks and then drive each of them up my RTI ramp to measure their flex scores. Well, here's the front of the TRD Pro, and I gotta say, it looks a lot like the Trailhunter. I mean, the Trailhunter has all the same hard points and all the same pieces except for this one, but you know, it's green in the Trailhunter and this one's red, but actually the upper control arms are the same too. The difference lies in these shock absorbers. That's right, these are 2.5-inch Fox live valve shocks, and they're tuned for desert running and wide open running in the desert. The other ones we see are Old Man Emu here, and Old Man Emu may not be familiar to a lot of you, but they are a overlanding shock. So that one is more for low speed rock crawling and carrying weight and that sort of thing. So the shocks are very, very different in these two vehicles. Well, this is pretty straightforward. We've got a steel weldment here, which is actually kind of interesting because on the outside there's a piece that's forged that's welded onto it. So this is actually more sophisticated than it looks. This is an aluminum knuckle and of course an aluminum upper control arm. And both the TRD Pro and the Trailhunter have this setup. We can see that this is the same as the TRD, well, the Trailhunter. I'm going to get these two mixed up back and forth, so just get used to it. The TRD Pro here is the same as the Trailhunter in terms of this angle that the upper control arm goes back at. You know, they both have similar amounts of anti-dive. And the only thing different about the springs is these are red and the other truck, they're black. This shock here, the TRD Pro shock, it's made for high-speed impacts, big compressions and extensions that you get when you're driving off-road really quickly. The Trailhunter is made for overlanding, so a little bit less violent and a little bit more control, a little bit more weight carrying and a little bit less, well, ass hauling, frankly. You can see right here that this has adjustable compression. You can basically turn this to adjust the compression of the shock absorber. You can't do that with a Trailhunter, but you don't need to really with a Trailhunter. This control arm is pretty much the same between the Trailhunter and the TRD Pro. Here's the inner pivot of this lower control arm, and here's the outer pivot right about here. Just behind this bolt, it's kind of in line with it right there. And of course, this is the point where the shock mounts. It's about 75% of the way out from the inner pivot, so that gives us a 75% motion ratio, or 0.75. Here's the whole enchilada when it comes to the front stabilizer bar. Here's the bar, and its pivot is right in there in that rubber bushing, and it comes out here, and it drops down to this point on the lower control arm. Now this point here is not 75 like we saw the pivot. It's more like, I don't know, it looks like 55% motion ratio. So yeah, that's the motion ratio of this stabilizer bar. Just inside the stabilizer bar bushing is this right here, which is the stabilizer bar disconnect mechanism. Yes, both halves go into that, and that either connects them or disconnects them depending on how you have the button set. Of course, here in the TRD Pro, there's a big guard, but there wasn't one on the Trailhunter. Curious. Of course, both of these trucks share the same brakes. They both have these big 4-piston calipers with 2 pins here you pull out, and then you can pull the pads right out the window and yeah, swap them that way. Now, if you have to change the rotors, okay, well, then you have to pull the caliper off, and on the back side, there's 2 big bolts. But you don't have to disconnect any lines, and you shouldn't have to make any fluid come out, so it's all dry. Well, that's about it for this close-up look at the Tacoma front suspension. I'm going to put that tire on and we'll go to the back. So this looks a lot like a Trailhunter. Lower control arm, really long. Upper control arm in there, back behind the spring. The shock leans forward. You can't see the bottom, but it's got the remote reservoir on the bottom. And of course, this is the frame side of the panhard rod. As you can see, the shock absorber is right here. And of course, we have the remote reservoir on the bottom. And you know, right here actually is a little place where you can set compression like you could on the front. You can click it, and you didn't get that on the Trailhunter. That doesn't have that. You know, there's no bump stop up here because, well, it's right there. And there's something more up on top. Here's the bump stop. But this isn't the only bump stop, because this has got a hydraulic bump stop that comes in sooner. Yes, it's right here. And of course, you can see it up in the spring. And it makes contact so that this is a little bit more progressive. They don't have anything like that in the Trailhunter because the Trailhunter has internal valving that does that job. You know, again, this is more for high-speed impacts, and the Trailhunter is more for low-speed, gradual rock crawling impacts. So it makes sense that they have a slightly different point of view. And also, the Fox shocks don't quite have the end stop control inside of them like the Old Man Emu do. This isn't really suspension, but it is clearance. That's right. These exhaust pipes on the TRD Pro are right here. On the Trailhunter, we saw that there were no exhaust pipes behind the axle. It dumped on the ground down by the differential. So again, that's a nod to rock crawling. This is pretty much the same for both trucks. It's got a single piston sliding caliper, and it's got an electric parking brake on the back and a ventilated rotor. Pretty much the same that you see on any Tacoma, frankly. This rolls on Goodyear Wrangler Territory RT size 265/70 or 18, which is 33 inches to you and me. They're 18 by 8.5 inch rims, and I think they look pretty good. And what do they weigh? 73 pounds. All right, I'm just doing this to do it. I don't expect a big difference. They're the same size wheels and the same size tires. They might have a little bit of difference in terms of, well, spoke design or whatever, but I don't think so. Let's see. 75.6. Well, I guess it's about time to get the tire back on the TRD Pro and take it and the Trailhunter into my backyard and measure their RTI score to see how they compare against each other and the rest of the Toyota lineup. A reminder that the ramp travel index test measures suspension flex. I'll drive up this 20-degree ramp until the rear tire just barely begins to lift off the ground. I'd say that's perfect. I lift it up a little, slide it in, and barely any resistance, but there is resistance when I pull it out. Then I'll measure the height and use trigonometry, convert that to the distance the front tire went up the ramp. We'll divide that by the wheelbase, then multiply by 1,000 to eliminate decimals, and we'll have our RTI value. A perfect score of 1,000 occurs when the driver's side rear tire touches the ramp before ever lifting off the ground. We've never seen that from a stock vehicle. So here we are with a whole bunch of scores. Frankly, these are the Toyota SUVs, pretty big scores. These are the pickup trucks, smaller scores because they have a longer wheelbase. So it really doesn't count to include these. So let's just look at the Gladiator Rubicon on down. So where do the Trailhunter and TRD Pro fit in? Well, the Trailhunter fits in right here at 532, and the TRD Pro we just saw scored a 520. So yeah, that's the difference. Now, these two are different by, 12 points, but that's not much. I mean, we did see significant differences in their suspension, bump stops, internal valving. So, I mean, I wouldn't expect these to be exactly the same, but at the same time, they're in the ballpark. Of course, this one here, the Gladiator Rubicon, it's got solid axles front and rear. You're not going to beat that with an independent front suspension. So that's not so bad that it's up here. But yeah, the Tacoma and these things are right around the Raptors. And really, it's better than all of the rest of the cars in the segment that have independent front suspension. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Anyway, that's what I found out. Let me know what you think in the comments.